My name's Isabel and welcome to Technically, the home of all things tech, computer science, and navigating this world of being a software engineer, specifically a female one at that. What I want to do is actually start off all of my videos with an interview prep question. As a full-time software engineer and a part-time computer science student, the thing that I hate the absolute most are interviews. Nowadays, the interview process to become an engineer is so competitive. I honestly think that the hardest part of being a software engineer is simply just getting the job and passing all of these interviews. You're basically studying for the SAT or the GRE. They could literally ask you any single subject. You have 10 seconds to really think about your answer, present it eloquently, and they might still hate you as a person, just like deep down. And so because I absolutely hate technical interviews and more so technical interview prep because I feel like I'm just like in an endless hole of studying, I want to start off all my videos with an interview prep question. My technical skills could always use a little work. Always. I think it's important to think about what it is you know, what you don't know, what the industry needs you to know, and at the same time to have an opportunity to practice articulating your responses. Since today we're talking about Git, it's only fitting that the interview question is about Git. So before we go into 3 main reasons why students really need to learn Git, question of the day is, what Git command do you run to save all of the changes you've made into the staging area before you commit your code? Now, if that didn't make any sense to you, A-okay. Just let me know and maybe we can dive into it next time. But if you do think that you have an answer for that, write it down in the comments below, like right now, ASAP. Even though it's super important to know the answer to a question, it's even more important to be able to articulate it in a way that is understandable to the person who's asking it. Literally, stay tuned until the end where I'll go through 3 potential different solutions, all at differing levels of how complete or how accurate they are. So now going back to the main topic, 3 reasons why students really should learn Git, like right now. So reason number 1 why students should learn Git, because it's not taught in schools. Wow, you would think that if you're paying like $60K a year, they would teach you something that's an industry standard. Nope. If you're going to a school where perhaps the computer science curriculum is like quite theoretical and it's not too much in line with the industry itself, or doesn't really focus on the skills necessary for a software engineer position specifically, it can be difficult to know that that's even something you need to learn. I remember for me, like I was first exposed to Git and GitHub through actually attending hackathons. So hackathons were like my favorite thing in college. You can check out my stickers. I'm a really big nerd, I know. At all these MLH hackathons, if you go to the MLH table, they'll usually have like awake chocolate, which was like my absolute favorite. It's caffeinated chocolate. And then they would also have like these GitHub cheat sheets. And I was like, what is GitHub? When I was first starting out, I didn't know that GitHub and Git were different things. To be fair, I didn't really know what I was doing, like period. And so I literally thought that, okay, well I have this folder on my desktop that has like all of my HTML, CSS, JavaScript files, and like I'll just like upload it, you know, to like Google Docs or something, because I thought that's what GitHub was. Yeah, so I knew that it was something I had to learn, but everything was just so confusing, and it only made sense to me when I started working with other people. So when I was at those hackathons, that was how I learned that, oh, this is how Git works in a collaborative setting. Like, this is why it's so cool. Here I am talking about how Git is cool. But that was how I was exposed to Git and GitHub. But I realized not that many people enjoy hackathons, or maybe there aren't that many in the area. And when I started my first post-grad job as a software engineer, I realized that a lot of my coworkers were struggling with these foundational Git commands. They either have used it once or twice, but only on their own projects, and they weren't used to working with others in that capacity, or they just like literally didn't know what Git was. Remember, everyone used to like freak out when they forget to put a commit message and then Vim would show up and you're just like, Vim, what do I do? So because it's not taught in schools, it's kind of up to the person and the individual to realize, oh, like this is maybe something I should learn. And I think that a lot of people get tripped up over Git just because it is so simple, yet at the same time can be super complex and confusing. And so the earlier you know the basics and can kind of work around that, the easier it's going to be. And there are definitely a lot of advanced features with Git and a lot of things you can do with it, but I think at least just coming into it with foundational basics of how to add, Git and merge and push code and all that. Especially the more and more you get comfortable with Git, the easier it is, and it's just something that you use every single day. Yeah. Reason number 2 you should learn Git is because literally everyone uses it. It's become such an industry standard nowadays where you'd be pretty hard pressed to find a company that doesn't use at least some sort of version control system. It's also a required skill a lot of the times when you're looking at job descriptions. It is kind of a thing now where like Git is this prerequisite skill that people expect from you to come in. Even if it's not Git per se, anything like Git makes your life as an engineer so much easier, and it's also free. So like, why wouldn't you use it? Okay, Isabel, but like, what's Git? So Git is a version control system that's used for collaboration. For example, your whole dev team would be working on one specific code base. And so if you guys are all editing like literally the same line of code, how do you know which one you want to keep and which one you want to delete? And so Git is kind of a way that helps you manage all of that. It essentially takes little snapshots of where the code looks like in time, so that if you ever make a mistake or you break something, which I do a lot, then you're able to revert back to a previous version. Sometimes you're gonna hear Git and GitHub used interchangeably. And like, yeah, people can use that interchangeably, but they're technically not the same thing. Git is a tool that's used to manage code source history, whereas GitHub is a cloud service that hosts all of these different projects. So you can even use Git with different providers. For example, Bitbucket is a common one that a lot of companies will choose to use, part of the whole Atlassian kit. But what's kind of daunting about Git is that usually you would use the terminal or a command line interface to like run all your Git commands. And if you've never used a CLI before, it is like, I'm lost. There are options, for example, in certain IDEs like RubyMine or IntelliJ. They have like Git features that make it pretty easy using like an interface. There's also the option to download Git's GUI as well. But honestly, I've been so used to using a terminal for all my Git commands that using a graphic UI actually makes me more confused. Yeah, it's more industry standard to learn how to do basic Linux commands and use the command line. Every single time I have it up, I feel like I'm a little hacker and I'm like, beep, boop, boop. You don't have to be an expert with it, but at least understand what it is, what it's used for, and have some basic understanding of the foundational commands. I think that is literally all you need. Number 3. Number 3 is that most job applications nowadays will actually ask for your GitHub link. That a GitHub profile shows a much more holistic view of you as a software engineer, especially if you're applying to these really competitive software engineering programs, or you're just applying to a position within a very strong engineering department. Oftentimes they'll either 1, require, or 2, optional, a GitHub link. I mean, like, between a cover letter and a GitHub account, I'd rather put my GitHub. A big reason why people are emphasizing your GitHub profile is that it is such a clear representation of how you code as an engineer. So when they're looking at your repos, they can see what your coding style is, how clean it is, how well you name your variables, like what your styles of commenting are. Looking at a GitHub account says so much more about you as an engineer than like how quickly you can solve a leak code problem or how you optimize something on HackerRank. Maybe you're just someone who isn't really good under pressure, and so having a really strong GitHub account with a variety of different projects will be really important. So for example, if you're specifically looking for roles in front-end web development or front-end engineering, some things that people are going to look at is how semantic is your code? Have you taken accessibility concerns into place? Are you using classes and IDs properly? How are you structuring everything? There's a big push in when you're looking for a job where it's like you need to have personal projects in your portfolio. The problem is that a lot of people who decide to build their websites from scratch, sometimes they don't really spend the extra time to focus on responsive design or UX and UI. And so the design of the website actually distracts the person looking at it away from all the cool stuff that they've actually done on the projects. If you know you're not the strongest UI person and you don't necessarily have all of the time to dedicate into building out a whole fleshed portfolio, you may be able to just slide with a GitHub profile, which I know plenty of people do and it's totally fine. Or if you wanted your own website, maybe check out Wix or Squarespace. I would say that if you do build out your own front end, make sure you're taking into consideration things like responsive design, readability, just essentially some basic user experience and UI foundations. Another tangent for another day. Overall, 3 reasons why you should learn Git as a student. 1 is that it's not taught in schools. 2, it's an industry standard, and honestly, everyone knows it, so that should be a big enough reason for you. And 3 is that most applications actually require or look very highly on a GitHub profile, and it just makes you a stronger applicant. But now, go into applications. Let's talk about the interview question, because your girl didn't forget about that. And so these are just 3 example answers that you may have, and I've broken down into like 3 different levels. In those like YouTube videos where it's like level 1 chef, level 2 chef, and level 3 chef, like makes lasagna or something. Like that's kind of what this is modeled after. I would say the level 1 answer would be git add period or git add star. Essentially, both of these 2 commands do the same thing, and they basically add all of the files into the staging area. While these 2 commands are technically correct as answers, they're kind of lazy answers, which is why I define them as a level 1. Reason being is because as a software engineer, as a programmer, you're trying to optimize your code as much as possible. You want to make sure that you're not taking up too much space, it's not taking too long to run everything, and you're also following the drive principles, which is don't repeat yourself. Similarly, you want to apply those same type of principles into how you're committing your code. If you're doing git add dot, you might be adding all this unnecessary bloat. You may also be committing changes that you didn't intend to. For example, if you're working on a file and you didn't finish it or something, you just commit everything, and then suddenly the whole website crashes and then your manager's messaging you on Slack like, dude, what? So a key to remember is that when you're committing code, you should only really commit the code that's essential to the functionality of whatever it is you're working on. Another thing is you also don't want to push out anything that's private or sensitive. For example, you don't really want to expose any API keys out there. A level 2 answer would be one that is more specific, and that's just git add file name. Now, it is a lot more tedious to have to manually add everything, but a quick way of getting around that is just type in git status, and it'll show you all of the files that have been changed and all the ones that are currently not in the staging area. All you need to do is copy the file names and the file paths from that status and then paste them into your git add message. You can do git add file 1, file 2, file 3 all at once so that you don't have to do like git add file 1, git add file 2, git add file 3. So that's a super quick way of only adding the essential files that you need. So for me, I love to double and triple check my code. And so a level 3 answer would be this little hack that my coworker showed me when I first joined my new company. And that is git add -p. So the -p is a flag and it means patch. What's cool about that is that you can see chunks of code that have been changed in the files. And what's great about that is that you can see like, oh, maybe I forgot to delete a comment, or oh, like maybe I should remove that console log statement because I was debugging an error, but turns out I was just spelling things wrong because I'm an engineer. Too close to home? And honestly, I think that this is actually faster than like git add and then file names, just because it'll automatically go through all of the changes and you literally hit like Y for yes, N for no, or D to skip the whole entire file. So like if you have like changes to like a package JSON file, you can literally just skip it and be like, nope, like I just need this code changed. So that wraps up my first ever video on YouTube. Oh my god. If you liked this type of format, interview questions and then like just me talking about like random things. I can't talk today, gosh. Okay, let me know and like subscribe.